unconventional conventionalists. First of all, I want you all to know that this is not a prank video. This just so happened to be the day that I decided to record this. This video is meant to be taken entirely seriously, so just disregard the date, okay? It's time we talk about another serious topic. And this time, that topic is survivor's instinct. So first of all, what is survivor's instinct? I think it could be best described as a subconscious defense mechanism. When either your own or somebody else's life is in danger, your survivor's instinct will kick in and do what it can to save either your own life or someone else's life. A good example is you see a toddler in a street and there's a car speeding down the road and that car does not see the toddler. Your survivor's instinct for that toddler kicks in, you run across the street, putting your own life in danger, tackle the toddler out of the path of the car, thus saving their life. That's a really, pretty straightforward example of what survivor's instinct is. And there's even some cases where survivor's instinct will actually give the individual almost superhuman powers. Could be super strength, and reflexes are amplified. It's a phenomenon, it really is, and it's very fascinating. But for this particular video, I want to emphasize on the importance of survivor's instinct's effects on suicide attempts. Here's another pretty straightforward example. Guy's just tired of life and he wants to off himself. So he goes on a bridge over water and climbs on the end of the bridge. And now he's just staring down at the water, and eventually somebody notices him and they call the police, and now there's just like this whole big scene happening right now. So you're probably wondering, well, if the guy made the decision to kill himself, why was he on the bridge that long for people to get attention and, come to his rescue? Survivor's instinct, that's why. The guy had made a fully committed, conscious decision to take his own life. But once he was on the bridge and looking down at the water, then came an uncommitted resistance from his subconscious that was fighting his conscious decision to do it. Does that make sense? That's survivor's instinct. That unconscious decision not to kill yourself, even though you've made the conscious decision to do it. And why is this important? Why am I talking about this? I'll tell you why. It's because far too often I see suicide survivors completely degraded and disrespected. Far too often I see their attempts just waved off as a cry for attention. That if they really wanted to kill themselves, they would have succeeded. But because they failed, they never actually wanted to do it. They just wanted to get some attention. If you ever said something like that, you are a fucking piece of shit. Alright? You are downplaying a very serious and low part of someone else's life. And furthermore, I see suicide survivors guilted for what they did. And they're called selfish. That shit needs to stop too. There is nothing selfish about having all this emotional and mental agony build up inside you so high that you reach a breaking point and you just break. Your brain, your mentality, your emotions, they just shatter. And you decide that you don't need to deal with this shit anymore. That you have the power to relieve yourself of all of this pain and suffering at any given moment. And when you make that conscious decision to take your own life, you feel like you are in power. And yes, usually you are crying as you're attempting, but at the same time, you have this feeling of peace. You feel almost relieved because you know the pain and suffering is about to end. And being pushed to that point where you feel like the only way out of all your pain and suffering is death, There is absolutely nothing selfish about that. And anyone who makes a suicide survivor feel selfish or guilty for what they tried to do, that's not going to help them in any way, shape, or form. That is not going to help their broken mental state. If anything, it just makes them wish that they succeeded. And now they're more likely to try again, because you're not taking their failed attempt seriously. Attempting suicide is not selfish. Say it with me. Attempting suicide is not selfish. And if you don't agree with that, then chances are you've never been to that point. If you've never been that deep down the depression whirlpool before, you have no place to talk. Instead, how about you let them know how much you love them? Let them know how glad you are that their attempt failed. Because suicide survivors need to know that. They need to be told that they are loved. They need that reassurance, alright? Don't think it's implied, okay? Because when you're mentally broken, you don't know what the fuck to believe. So yeah, mentally broken people need to be reassured that they are still loved. And if you are a true friend, and if you really care about them and love them, you need to hold them closer, not push them away. Do not be like my ex-friends in New Orleans, who, a couple of them, were responsible for my suicide attempt in the first place. And when I survived, they put all the blame on me. Made me feel very selfish and guilty for attempting suicide. Made me apologize for attempting suicide. And then they turned their backs on me. Too bad that this pandemic couldn't have happened 2 years ago, spring 2018, because that's when all this shit went down. If there was a lockdown during that time, I don't think that dreadful chain of events would have happened. It's really hard to talk about. And now I've gone done and made this video about me, but I'm not going to apologize for it. Also on my channel is a video just about suicide, not so much about survivor's instinct, but just suicide in general. And if you haven't seen it, search it out and watch it, because I made that video like less than a week after I got out of the mental ward after attempting suicide. And you can hear how broken I am. And literally in the video, I call myself selfish, and I apologize for doing it, because at that point my friends were manipulating me post-attempt into thinking that it was all my fault and not theirs at all. So yeah, just remember that survivor's instinct saves lives, and you should be grateful for it. Be happy that survivor's instinct is a thing, because it prevents some really wonderful and important people from leaving this realm. I'm not going to do my usual outro, because I just feel like putting up 2 middle fingers at the end of a video like this just doesn't really work well. Instead, I want you, my fans, to know that if you ever get down to that point, if you ever are at the bottom of that whirlpool, and you need someone to reach down and try to pull you out, I'm there. You can hit me up, my DMs on Facebook or on Instagram, and let me know what you're feeling. That's it, guys. That's the note we're leaving on. It's just the way it is, but I had to get this out. I couldn't hang on to this baggage forever. Laters.